Good afternoon, everyone. I got sent this clip earlier this morning, and I had to check the date twice because I wanted to make sure it was happening like today and not in February or something like that. Because he being Justin Trudeau, was doing a big town hall push, and I thought maybe this was part of that cache of videos, right? But this was published last night from a town hall last night, March 22nd, in Thunder Bay. And it's Mackenzie Gray. He says, quote, "Tonight in Thunder Bay, the PM said, quote, there are 10,000 or so Lavalin jobs right across the country, 9,000, 10,000 at risk if the company were to go through full criminal prosecution. Previously, he'd only been saying 9,000, despite SNC not raising job losses with the PMO at all." Sorry, I added the at all. Hashtag Canada Poly. So we're going to listen to the full 2 minutes of Trudeau, and then we're going to go and listen to the CEO of Snc Lavalin say, yeah, we never said that. We never said that. Nope. So here's Mr. Trudeau answering a well-asked question, one that I would, it's a good question, and Trudeau's answer, see if you can spot the tap dance when the tap dance starts, right? And where he tap dances you too.
A little follow-up there. So if nothing inappropriate really happened, why have two former ministers quit, your staff member quit, your clerk quit, and another MP the other day quit? It just doesn't seem to add up, and I think I don't think I'm the only one in this room that thinks that. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Well, let's actually go back, because I think a lot of people I've spoken to aren't exactly sure what this whole thing is about. And at the simplest possible level, there's a question.
So I'm going to point it out. He is not answering the question that was asked, which is, like, all of these ministers left, if nothing actually happened, why aren't you waiving privilege to allow them to speak? And he says, no, you're misunderstanding the problem. I'll explain again. Here's what happened with Snc Lavalin. So trying to take the SNC narrative and give a new narrative to it, right? Reframing the story. Because currently the story is Snc Lavalin was charged in 2015. In 2018, the Liberals snuck criminal code changes into the budget. And then Snc Lavalin was supposed to get those criminal code changes to allow them to access a DPA, of which the government, SNC lobbied the government a whole bunch while this was being decided. So they were charged years ago, and many times over does the Snc Lavalin CEO say this happened between 7 and 20 years ago. So they're trying to diminish this. It happened so long ago. We're so different now. Everything's better. But Justin Trudeau is not answering the question that was asked to him. He's tap dancing away to take over that SNC story and tell you his own story. This is how Justin Trudeau has experienced Snc Lavalin, and he wishes you would experience it this way too. Pay close attention. I believe you'll be called racist or some Islamophobe if you don't experience it just as Mr. Trudeau describes.
The Attorney General of Canada has an opportunity when a company is facing criminal charges for behavior in the past to say, instead of applying criminal charges, let's give you massive penalties and financial sanctions instead, and not cause you to go through the challenges of criminal sanctions, which have direct impact not just on your ability to do business in Canada, but your ability to do business around the world. Now, in the Lavalin situation, there were some terrible, terrible decisions made by a former board of directors, by former leadership of the company, that were then fired, and there's some on their way to jail. And the company has worked very hard over the past few years to try and clean up its act, and has done significant jobs on that. Now, there are 10,000 or so Lavalin jobs right across the country, 9,000, 10,000, in all sorts of different places around the country.
9,000 and 10,000 are really different. If you have $9,000, it's different than having $10,000. If you had $10,000, well, you'd have 1,000 more than if you had $9,000. So this is just trying to inflate the numbers, and it's very poorly done because he realized that people are recording this, and yeah, it's going to get out. Like, really, wow. wow, the inability to filter himself from telling something that is not true to a crowd is incredible. What a trait to have in a prime minister.
And if the company were to go through full criminal prosecutions, those jobs absolutely could be at risk. So, one of the things that we looked at, because one of our responsibilities, what people expect of their government, is to try and say, okay, how are we going to protect workers who had nothing to do with the bad decisions made by the leaders of the company, and we don't want the workers to be penalized for it.
How do you protect the workers in a country when the bad decisions of the country's leadership affect them, like the canola farmers, right? Or anybody affected by the new NAFTA. Okay, here's the CEO of Snc Lavalin, and they're talking about 9,000 jobs. Trudeau just said 9 or 10,000 jobs might disappear, if this company has to go through prosecution. And I'll tell you, I listened to this whole interview multiple times. The CEO says, "Yeah, we'll go to prosecution if we have to." Like he says we're innocent as a company, and the way he views what has happened is a similar way to how Mr. Trudeau views what happened. Nothing was wrong. We engaged with the government the way that you're supposed to engage in government. You engage the government, through lobbying, transparent lobbying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, he tries to make a good case. And if you don't already know the facts, you would dismiss it as probably overreaction if you don't already know the facts. But the fact is, it's 9,000, not 10,000. And I don't know if it's actually 9,000, but anyway, here is the CEO of Snc Lavalin. Here we go.
I'm going to come back to what did you say about the potential for job losses? Because the inference is that if you do not get to go the way of deferred prosecution agreement, 9,000 jobs disappear.
Well, that's incorrect, and we've never said that. I think if there's no DPA or remediation agreement, and if we eventually get to court, so we're 7 years past and we're still not actually in court.
So we never said 9,000. And this 7 years thing, this is the big push for this interview. He comes back to that well a bunch of times. He keeps saying 7 years past, 7 years past, 7 to 20 years ago this happened. And it's very interesting. So we just heard last night Justin Trudeau, this is at a town hall last night, say 9 to 10,000 jobs are at risk if they don't have access to a DPA, right? So one, he's inflating numbers. Two, this is last night. Here's the CEO of Snc Lavalin on the 21st, March 21st, which is a full 24 hours before this, saying that's not true. So are you lying? Did you miss this interview, Mr. Trudeau? Or are you aware that you're not telling the truth to this audience? Or is it just like the 10,000 number? It's close enough to the truth that maybe we'll have 10,000 jobs there someday soon. Maybe if we just let them off the hook, if we just give them our money and let them, break the law and not have any criminal consequences for it or really other consequences for it, right? That poor company suffered long enough. Hey, think of the children, the jobs and the pensioners or something. It's just offensive, seriously. Ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to line up the next little talking point here. Here's an exchange talking about the jobs, but also he's saying that we've cooperated with everybody and everything's going to be above board, except that they were charged again in 2015 and had the law changed in a 2018 budget bill without proper debate, without a whole bunch of really shady stuff, or with a whole bunch of really shady stuff. So anyway, here's again Mr. Bruce.
So this is not just about jobs or getting let off something. We want to prove that the company and the way that the company has acted in an open, transparent manner, cooperated with everyone and all the authorities. We believe that we've met the criteria.
It is about jobs, though, because that is what Justin Trudeau said by his own admission led him to have people in his office have multiple conversations with the Attorney General. So can you tell us the extent, if it's not 9,000 jobs that disappear, if it is a slow attrition over time, are we looking at a future where SNC only has 1,000 jobs, 2,000 jobs. Did you ever spell out clearly what the economic loss to Canada could be?
No, because we put forward in our submissions what the public interest case is. The DPA and the legislation for the remediation agreement is really clear. You cannot justify it on economic alone benefits. It has to be in the public interest. And the other thing that the remediation agreement is really clear about, and it replicates what you've got in the US and the UK and other jurisdictions, is you need to pursue the people responsible and you need to protect the innocents. And the innocents are employees, shareholders, customers, supply chain, pensioners. And at the moment, the exact opposite is happening.
Did you threaten to move your headquarters from Montreal?
No.
Never.
No.
So where did this issue come up from? That was.
So the two things. This is one, the moving your headquarters from Quebec and the automatic no. One of the main pushes in the early phases of this story was that Snc Lavalin could be gone from Quebec. It could be, acquired by another company and gone out of Canada. Meanwhile, they've got a 20-year lease for their headquarters in Quebec, et cetera, et cetera. There's all sorts of things, including the Snc CEO saying, we're not going anywhere. And the other part is, this whole interview is trying to get positive talking points out. The innocent people are the workers and the pensioners, and we don't want to damage all of those innocents in pursuing justice, which isn't even really justice because it happened so long ago that we can hand wave all that corruption away. We don't do that anymore. We don't need to have a consequence for it. So don't worry about that. And this is, I don't know if this is a legal strategy. I don't know what it is, but it is interesting to note. This is a clip of SNC CEO saying he met with Andrew Scheer and he seemed to be fairly pro-business. He doesn't understand the big deal. Here it is.
And then from the Conservative side, is it different from what you've heard from the federal government? Well,
I met the leader of the Conservative government at social events on 3 occasions, and he seemed pro-business and seemed supportive. So I'm sort of puzzled by the reaction.
The threat.
So Mr. Scheer has, talked with him at social events, met with the lobbyists as well. While everybody else was talking DPA, Mr. Scheer says, he met with them and I think he said he didn't discuss that. And anyway, I'll line up the next clip. Okay, I'll show you 2 different clips with him talking about 7 to 20 years ago. This is the big push. Like, this is 7 to 20 years ago, and we're complying with what people want. We meet the criteria, et cetera, et cetera. But the 7 to 20 years ago is something that he wants to really get out there, and he comes back to it often. So I'm going to show you 2 different clips. Here's the first one.
We're actually still trying to resolve things that happened 7 to 20 years ago. I mean, we've apologised for the behaviour of the previous management, and ultimately, I firmly believe that the prosecution service should hold those responsible to account. And
so that's one. I'll get to the next one. Hold on. All right, this is all the way at the beginning of the interview. This is actually just before the first clip I showed you, and it's the same. It's exactly the same phrasing, exactly the same everything.
Everything that's being said is talking about things that happened 7 to 20 years ago. It didn't happen last month. It didn't happen last year. It's 7 to 20 years ago. And we are trying our best, to put all of this behind us in an open and transparent way.
You've said that before.
Listen, officer, I've apologized. It happened 5 years ago, and I'm trying to put this behind me. And I would appreciate it if you'd let me get in my car and just drive home. Thank you. That doesn't work that way? The law doesn't work that way? What? Right? I mean, come on. So we've got Justin Trudeau saying 9 or 10,000 jobs, close enough. It's close enough to the truth. It's close enough to the truth that nothing happened and there's no pressure Oh, okay, if there was pressure, it was totally legitimate pressure because of all these jobs that we've got to save. These 9 or 10,000 jobs. Right? Wow. This is our government. Is this who we want? Is this the kind of leadership we're looking for? And the last little bit here is from the CBC CBC reporting on the same interview. Unlike Trudeau government, he said, Montreal-based company has never cited the protection of 9,000 Canadian jobs as a reason it should be granted a remediation agreement to avoid a criminal trial. Quote, the thing that somehow they're going to be unemployed is not true because they're highly qualified, highly experienced people. So not only are the 9,000 jobs that would be potentially lost by SNC Lavalin not be lost in the same way that Mr. Trudeau is presenting it, right? So these people would find jobs is what both the CEO of SNC Lavalin and most sane people would agree, right? The jobs aren't disappearing, especially when it's a company that's engineering and like engineering and construction like SNC Lavalin. Those government contracts need to get done. They don't leave the country. So frustrating to watch Mr. Trudeau. Interesting to have his talking points absolutely shot down by people who should be backing them up, and presumably the people who gave him the talking points. But hey, who knows? He's just winging it. He's like Fonzie jumping the shark. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful Saturday. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca.